Hello, I'm Laura. Today we're going to be looking at collaboration. And in fact, this is a collaborative training session because I'm going to be co-hosting it with my colleague Sharon. I'm going to be looking at what collaboration means, also why it's important, and we'll be uncovering some of the methodology behind it, as well as looking at what Cambridge has developed to help you. And Sharon, well, let Sharon tell you what she plans to do.
I'm Sharon, and we'll be looking at how we can use collaboration in our online classrooms today.
Our aim today is to answer the following questions. First of all, what do we mean by collaboration? Why is it important? We'll look at how we can build effective collaborative activities into our lessons. And finally, we'll look at how we can ensure collaboration occurs in our online teaching. So what do we mean by collaboration? Well, we can say it is the situation of two or more people working together to create or achieve the same goal. The ability to collaborate with others has become increasingly important and regarded as one of the most important skills in members of the workforce in the 21st century. I really like this quote, and if we look at the last part of it, in spite of physical distance and time restrictions, people work remotely increasingly across the globe in the 21st century, and as we can see during this lockdown, we're getting a lot of practice at that. So I think looking at collaboration in online activities is going to not just be a necessity for you as teachers and for your students, but it's giving them great practice for the future in the workforce. Collaboration and teamwork can have a very, very powerful and positive effect on your students. To illustrate that, I'd like to tell you a story from when I was in primary school, and I think it was either my first or second year in primary school. This is one of my strongest memories from that time. We were put into groups of 3, and we made these things, rock cakes. They're a very, very simple and easy to make cake. It was my first time baking at school. Now, I'd baked with my mother at home quite a lot and I enjoyed it. It's something you probably do with your primary students. In our team, we were 3 of us. There was me, there was a girl called Patricia, and there was a girl called Vanda. I remember them well. They were not my best friends at the time. I didn't sit next to them, but I knew them a little bit. I don't remember being put into the group. I don't remember making the rock cakes. I don't remember who did what. I remember very little about this activity because this happened when I was about 6 years old. So that's a very, very long time ago, more than 45 years ago, okay? So my memories are hazy. But what I do remember is after we'd made them and we'd tasted them, we turned to each other and we congratulated each other on our teamwork. That's a really powerful memory. When I think about it, I get the feeling inside me that I had at that time. We shook hands with each other and we said, "Good job." I remember the teamwork more than the activity. I remember the teamwork more than the actual cakes themselves. That feeling of accomplishing something together is so powerful, it stays with me until this day. So how can we ensure that we integrate true collaborative tasks into our classrooms? Tasks that meet the needs of our students in terms of their level, their ages, their learning needs. Well, as you probably already know, at Cambridge we've developed a range of life competencies and fit them into what we call the Cambridge Life Competencies Framework. These cover a number of areas, as we can see, and we have a full brochure for each of these competencies. Here's the one on collaboration, and this is the one we're going to explore today. The learning journey starts at pre-primary, goes through primary, secondary, higher education, all the way to up to at work. So this can be useful for your own professional development as well. Let's explore collaboration and let's look at how the life competencies work and what we mean by competency. These competencies are grouped into 6 main areas, as we could see from the previous slide. Okay, we've got our 4 21st century skills, if you see there: creative thinking, critical thinking, collaboration and communication, but we also have learning to learn and social responsibilities. These are supported by 3 foundation layers, okay, so emotional development, digital literacy and discipline knowledge. And in this case, of course, the discipline knowledge is English language teaching. So what exactly do we mean by competency? Because we often hear about life skills. So why competency? Isn't it just the same thing? Well, actually, no, it's not. It goes beyond skill. In fact, skill is only one facet of what makes a competency. Here we can see we have knowledge, skill, and attitudes. These are the 3 areas of competencies, okay? Knowledge is what you need to know to do something well. Skill is the degree of mastery or fluency in using the competency, so you get this from practice. And attitudes refer to the disposition and mindset you need to develop knowledge and skill in this area, and all 3 of those together then form the competency. When you are competent in something, you've developed your knowledge, you've developed the skill, and you've developed your attitudes or mindset to this. So we've looked at the areas of competency, we've outlined what they are, okay? What we need to think about now then is how each area is broken down into its competencies. So if we have a look here, we can see that 4 of our areas of competency then have 3 basic competencies, and 2 of them have 4. If you look at collaboration, this has 4 different competencies. These are then broken down into more specific skills descriptors for each part of the learning journey. Further on in this presentation, Sharon is going to talk you through the 4 areas of competency in relation to 3 of the learning journeys. So, for example, she will look at the 4 areas of competency in the way they might relate to kindergarten or primary and middle school, and connect that to some activities that you can do online. For now, I'm just going to give you an overview of the actual skills descriptors as they relate to collaboration. So here we can see the stage of learning is pre-primary. You can see the skills descriptors for one of the competencies for pre-primary here, which is taking personal responsibility for own contribution to a group task. And you can see all the specific skills descriptors that will make up that competency. We've got primary here for the same area for collaboration. You can see some of those, and secondary, and then secondary continued, and then even going up to higher education. And remember, I did say that these go even further to look at skills descriptors for the at work situation. These could be very useful for you as a teacher if you're creating some in-house professional development, for example. Let's have a look at how then these competencies and skills descriptors can be used to inform our coursebook development and also to help you utilize the coursebooks. Here we've got an example from Power Up, Level 4. You can find this in the brochure for collaboration. It's at the back, along with examples from other grades or levels. So we've got our competency here is taking personal responsibility for own contributions to a group task. The specific skills descriptor from this area that this activity is focusing on is takes part in tasks by interacting with others and stays on task, communicates own knowledge of a topic. And here's the activity, making a poster about the seasons in your country. This is from Power Up, so you can see it's part of the missions, stage 3. If you're using Power Up, you'll be very familiar with the missions. They're very hands-on, very active. Now, if you are not using one of our newer titles that have been written with the skills descriptors in mind, that doesn't mean to say that you cannot use these competencies and skills descriptors in your lessons. You can have a look at the skills descriptor, have a look a bit at the material you're using and sort of analyze what's going on there. So you can exploit what's already inherent in the activity, or you can add activities or adjust activities accordingly. With something like collaboration, it's very easy to add or adjust activities to make them more collaborative. Just ask yourself, what can the children do together to achieve a common goal in this activity? How can I make it more collaborative? Use the brochure to help you. They are all available on our website. You can download them as PDFs. If you cannot find it, then please get in touch with us and we can send you them. It's very, very easy. So now Sharon is going to talk you through how to apply these ideas to your remote classes, to your online teaching. And she's going to give you examples of activities that you can use for pre-primary, kindergarten, primary and middle school, and also secondary school.
To get started, we need to begin at the beginning, which is our online classroom rules. Now, these are similar to what we'd have in the classroom, but obviously we need to think about some of the issues we may face with our online activities or our breakout rooms that we'll be using. If you haven't already set up online classroom rules, don't worry, you can always set them up previous to an activity, and then you can always refer back to them for future activities and say, oh, remember these classroom rules, we're using them. So don't be hard on yourself if you haven't already got those in place. Clear instructions, this applies to every activity, and we all know if we don't give a clear instruction, generally it doesn't work. So, and then we have to go back and reiterate those instructions again. So do make short, direct instructions to our students. And we're going to look at how we can make sure that our students understand those instructions a little bit down the line. Objectives, again, at the beginning of the lesson, please put that up where the students can see what the objectives are. We need to start getting our students used to there is an objective of every lesson, so that our learning is transparent and our students start taking responsibility for their learning. And I think this is even more valid when we talk about our teenage students, because a lot of the time we'll hear our students say, oh, what's the point of this? Well, if they can see clear objectives and where they're going, it'll help them understand this a little bit better. Here are the 4 key competencies within the area of collaboration. First one we have is taking personal responsibility for own contributions to a group task. This area looks at student contribution and explaining their contributions to others. We then have listening respectfully and responding constructively to others' contributions. This is something we look at a lot in oracy, if some of you are familiar with the oracy methodology. And here we want to make sure that our students are listening attentively and responding appropriately in a group activity. We then have managing the sharing of tasks in a project. In any group activity, we expect our students to rotate in the leadership role and to be able to identify the tasks and any subtasks there are in that activity and to share them out fairly. We then have working towards a resolution related to a task. This might be looking for solutions to a problem-solving activity and then identifying the outcome resolution of that task. And there you have the 4 key competencies which cover the area for collaboration that we can ensure our students are incorporating in their activities. So if we begin with kindergarten, I've chosen a song as it's one of the more popular activities to do in a kindergarten classroom. But what's going to be different about this song, we're going to get some of the students singing the song and the other half of the students just doing the actions to the song. So they're going to have to collaborate together by watching each other, following each other and listening very carefully to the next step to be able to carry out that activity together. So firstly, we'll play the song or the video and we'll get all our students to just listen and watch. Then we'll play and watch the video again, and this time we'll get all our students to join in with the actions. Now you may want to demonstrate the actions before you start the song or the video, and that's fine too, depending on your level of students. Then we'll play and watch the video again, and this time we'll all sing along and we'll all do the actions at the same time. Now this is where it gets a little bit harder. So this is where we're going to start splitting the group. So some of them are only singing and the other half are just doing the actions. Now we may want to demonstrate this first by having one student only sing the song and one student only do the actions, just to demonstrate how that works and how the rest of us need to listen carefully and just watch those students doing those actions or singing that song. And then we can attempt to do it with a higher number of students. So then we will repeat this again because it's not going to happen miraculously in the first go, we know that, but we're going to give that another attempt, and you might want to do it 2 times, that's fine too. This will really make them familiar with the process of the activity. And then depending on how much time we have, we could also be more adventurous and swap the roles. So group A would now be doing the activities or the actions, sorry, and group B will now be doing the singing. Or we could save that for the next lesson. So if we go back to the Cambridge Life Competencies framework, we can see here the descriptors that suit this particular activity. So if we look at the first part, taking personal responsibility for own contributions to a group task, even at such a young age, we can see clearly the development in our students. For example, is keen to participate in group activities. And I think that's something that's easily evident when we watch our kindergarten students participating in an activity. You can see the excitement in their face a lot of the time when they can do, you know, quite an active activity or sing along to a song. We've also got kids play going by responding to what others are saying or doing. Now, as we broke this activity down into some students singing and some students acting, The students that are acting have to follow on for the students that are listening. So it's ensuring that they're observing and following the procedure of the song. And of course they have to observe the rules of the game to follow it, and then take turns in shared activities. And this is again where we're going to switch that around, and the students that are singing are now going to become the students doing the actions, and vice versa. So if we look at the listening respectfully and responding constructively to others' contributions, what we can tick here is shows he or she is listening and thinking, that he or she is engaged throughout the task. And again, this is them listening to the song and following with the actions accordingly. Managing the sharing of tasks in a project. So our students need to understand the steps needed to complete the activity, that they're actually a part of a team and it's a whole. Successfully contributes to the activity or task. Says if he or she feels happy with what he or she has done. And again, at the end of any activity, we see the excitement and the pleasure on our students' face, and they might, be jumping up and down and clapping or going yay, to demonstrate how much fun they had. So we can tick those quite easily as well. And then, of course, recognizing when a task has been completed. Working towards a resolution related to a task, so it stays engaged and focused, does not get distracted, so that's keeping on tasks. Persists with the play activity and shows determination to succeed in chosen activity. So carrying that out activity from the beginning to the end and completing that task as a whole. Now these are only some of the descriptors from the Cambridge Life Competencies framework for kindergarten here, but you can obviously cherry pick the ones that you would like your students to achieve in each activity. So, or you can look at your activity, okay, which ones will my students be able to accomplish, and then you can list those. And also you can share these with your parents to show the progress of their child in each activity. Or you can collect them and share them on a weekly or a monthly basis. Moving up the learning journey to primary and middle school students, we're looking at effective collaboration in the breakout rooms. As with any activity, the clear instructions is necessary for every activity in a classroom. However, it's more important before we send them to our breakout rooms. It's a good idea to share these instructions on a shared screen so they can read clearly what those instructions are, as well as listening to you. Once you've explained those instructions, it's a good idea to take them back off the screen and then to ask students questions or to explain what they're now going to be doing next, just to clarify their understanding on that. You can also get them to take a screenshot of the instructions after you've clarified it with them. Ensure that students understand that they must take turn in sharing their ideas, and every other student must listen while one person is speaking. If they don't follow this order, they'll probably end up not getting a lot done, but there will be a lot of chaos going on in that breakout room. Also ensure that one member takes the responsibility of taking all the notes for all the ideas or the answers that they're going to then be sharing back as a whole class in the main room. Setting a time limit, also make sure that the students stay on task, don't get distracted, and know that they have to come back with a solution or an answer or be sharing their ideas within a certain amount of time. So it keeps them on track. It also makes sure that every breakout room will finish at the same time and then can come back to the main room. So for primary and middle, we're going to do a reading exercise. So we're going to find a text, and it might be a text from the course book. It may be a text that you've found somewhere else or on the internet, but it's got to be a text that the students are not familiar with. So we split this text into several parts, and then we split the students into groups according to the number parts of the text. Each group will then name themselves. This just makes it a little bit more fun, more personal for the students, and even a little bit more competitive. And then we're going to distribute these texts randomly, and we can do this either by preparing emails in advance with the student names per group and putting that text in that email, or we can do it by WhatsApp groups or any other method that's actually easier for yourselves. So then when we're in the lesson and we've explained the activity, all we have to do then is go back to the email and click send, and they're ready to go to the students. Do remember to take note of which text you get shared with which group. And the reason for this is when we come back later, we're going to read out in order of the original text. So our students will now, in their breakout rooms, analyse the text together, and they will predict what will happen next in that text. So if they're imagining the text as a whole, they'll look at their paragraph and they'll say, okay, so what should come next to fit in well with this text? You could also ask them to predict what came before that. If it's a story, a text that you're sharing with them, it's quite nice to predict the beginning as well. So what led to this part in this particular text? And we need to make sure that our groups delegate someone to do the note taking in the group and to take the notes of the evidence that they understood from that paragraph itself that led them to create the next paragraph or the paragraph before that. So then students come back to the main room and share their ideas. Again, like I said earlier, we'll pick the group that had the very first paragraph from the original text. So that means it will be a nice flow in order according to that text as well. If you have a group that's got the first text, obviously they cannot predict what came before that. I mean, they could if they can be really creative, but I think it will be quite obvious that there wasn't a previous text before that. So what you could do in that case, if you just wanted to, get a little bit more out of the activity, you could just give them the first two opening sentences for the text and then let them create the rest of that. Okay, and then we're going to share the original story via your main screen, and we're going to read it out. And here we can see which groups got the nearest to the correct version of the text. And there can be many variants of this task. For example, the groups can read their creation either after the original text, if they shared it, and the next group follows, or they can actually just share the new version and the other students follow on. So we're completely omitting the original text and just having a brand new text created by all groups. Or we can allow our students to choose the original text or the recreated text, and then the students can say which one is true or false. So if we look at the Cambridge Life Competencies framework, we can see the descriptors that apply to this activity we've just completed. So taking personal responsibility for own contribution to a group task, the students will be using language to interact with each other. For example, I agree, I don't agree with you, or you're right, I'm not sure about that, or that's a good idea. So that's the language they'll be using. Also, the students are aware of when and how to take turns and when and how to interrupt. A really important descriptor here to allow the students to carry out that activity at Effective Online, because it can get out of hand otherwise, everybody trying to talk at the same time. So this is something that you really might want to list as one of the things they need to pay attention to before they go into breakout rooms and carry out these activities. We've also got takes part in tasks by interacting with others and stays on task, communicates own knowledge of a topic, and then we've also got the is aware of how to clarify ideas. So, and it goes on, as you can see here. Now, again, these descriptors, you can pick out certain descriptors per activity, and you might, want to only pick out one or two at the very beginning for activities, and so that slowly we can add more and more to each activity, or on a weekly or a monthly basis, however you want to manage that, to show the development and the progress that students are making, and to make them really aware of what they should be focusing on. I've said previously how we have to be very transparent in our teaching and our learning, and that students understand the assessment criteria and the aims and the objectives of our lesson. So they're taking responsibility for their own learning and their own development as well. For secondary, we have a collaborative writing activity, and I've chosen writing because it really is one of the more challenging skills for our students to develop. I believe collaborative writing really benefits our students in making progress with their writing, because they learn so much more from each other. They see that they're also not the only ones that can make mistakes. They're not being judged by the teacher here, and it's a team effort to produce a good piece of writing. So there's a lot less stress on our students, but a lot more support amongst themselves. So we're going to set the scene initially. Now, this might be something that they're already doing in their course book, or that you've taught previously this week, but it might be an extension activity where you want them to take a different direction, so a completely different scene altogether. Whichever it is, get them prepared for that, and get them familiar with that scene. We're then going to group our students, and this can be groups of 4 or 5. If you have lower numbers, it can also be 3. We're going to ask our students to write a short story, and I've put 100 to 150 words here. It could be 50 to 75 if they're really at a lower level, or they've just started and it's a little bit challenging for them. Anything more than that I don't think is going to be really effective in an online lesson, because we don't have as much time to do that. We're also going to give them a lead in. Now, this might be the beginning, the first line of a story, or it might be a phrase that we'd like them to use within their writing. I've chosen this one here, so it will go something like, and at that moment, everything was about to change. Now, depending on how we read this, it can be quite exciting for the students. It can be quite scary. It can make the students feel quite nervous. So this can create a variety of feelings depending on how we read that out. Now, you may not read that. You may ask them to read it themselves and decide and how that makes them feel. And that will give a nice variety of individual creativity there. We can also include words that we'd like them to incorporate into their writing. Now, it might be any random words that they've learned during the week. It might be some adverbs or adjectives. It might be some words that you'd like them to find the synonyms for, to try to get one step further in their learning process. So we can adapt this quite a lot to offer a more challenging piece of writing that we require them to produce. Once they've done this task, we get them to return to the main room. And remember, while they're doing the task, we can visit all these breakout rooms as well to keep an eye on them. So then we're going to listen to each group's story, and we're going to award marks out of 10. We don't want our students to be marking their own story, obviously, for obvious reasons. So they'll just give a grade or a mark for every other group, and then the group that has the highest marks will be the ones clearly that has the most creative piece of writing. Now, not only are they learning from each other in their group, but by listening to each of the other groups writing, they're getting a variety of ideas and ways of thinking as well for them to use in the future. You could ask your students to reflect on this task as homework, or you could ask them to take down something they really liked from each group and then perhaps share that in the next lesson before you start another piece of writing. So what was it that really that you found really interesting or creative in the other group's piece of writing? And it can be any group, it doesn't have to be all of them. So just one little piece of reflection will certainly go a long way. And while they're preparing this, again, one of the students will be taking notes in these breakout rooms, but they can also use the whiteboard as well. And they can also take a picture of that whiteboard and then share it back when they're back in the main room as well. So there's many ways that we can share the outcomes of those breakout rooms. And here again, if we look at the Cambridge Life Competencies framework, we can see the secondary competencies. And on the left, again, the same structure as in all the other competencies framework here. But here we're looking at, for example, taking the personal responsibility for the own contribution to the group task. And if we look at the descriptors here, makes relevant suggestions based on the current topic of conversation, is aware of how the group can work together to achieve the task, respectfully waits for their turn to speak, politely interrupts if necessary, and stays on task. And then again, if we go down to the listening respectfully aspect, again, we're acknowledging weaknesses in their own and other suggestions when these are pointed out, listens attentively while other students are contributing, giving their opinions on the students' contributions respectively, and builds on the ideas of other students. Again, so this is where they're really going to be discussing and sharing and listening and acknowledging, you know, their own weaknesses and their strengths, as well as, you know, other students. And managing the sharing of the tasks, again, so we're helping other students understand the task. So you might have a member of the group that's not quite sure or actually goes off track. So then other members of the group can perhaps help that person understand and clarify the task at hand, and lists the necessary steps to achieve those tasks. And again, working towards a resolution, making sure everyone stays on topic, even if there's disagreements, and coming to a decision together for a productive outcome. Some things to remember. Do ensure that your activities require some sort of challenge for the students. If the activity isn't challenging, they will get bored very quickly. So do make sure that there's something in there that requires them to have a genuine discussion, or to solve a problem, or the need for them to work together as a team. Where possible, make sure there's an option for choice in there, however simple that is, because students want to show their own strengths in some way or another, and given that choice, they can choose how to demonstrate that. For those of you familiar, the think, pair, share activities. So our students, you know, take the time to think about the task at hand. They then pair up and carry out that activity together. and come to some sort of conclusion or decision at the end of that, or produce something from that pair work, and then they share with others. Great opportunity here for collaboration, making the most of the time in the classroom, is the flipped classroom. So you can set them up with the tasks outside, as in maybe the research aspect or the areas that you want them to look at, and you can do that on a quick video that you take and share with the students, or it might be in a document form, so that when they come to the class, they come prepared and actually carry out an activity in that class time. So it will be more effective for collaboration activities. Don't forget as well that independent work does incorporate sections where students can share, so that they go off and do a task on their own, perhaps before the lesson, and then when they come back to the lesson, they're sharing that knowledge and those topics together, and then you could put them into groups, they could discuss them, what each other found, and look at that evidence, and then again come to some sort of conclusion or decision on the evidence or the information found. So independent work leads to collaboration as well in the end.
We hope you found this useful. Please don't forget to go to our website, where you can download copies in PDF form of all the booklets for our Life Competencies framework. There's an introductory booklet as well, which will give you a lot of information on how to use them. Or you can ask your local consultant or distributor to send you a copy. Thank you very much from both of us. We hope this has been useful. We've certainly enjoyed collaborating on this training session for you, and hope to see you again.